Okay, everyone, we're just going to go over some of the basic ground rules. My name is Michael Watson. I'm the Employee Experience Advisor for the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. I'm the moderator for today's program. I'm also on the board of 1stGenYale, and also would like to introduce Lise Chapman, who's the president of 1stGenYale. She can wave in the background, if you can see her. What we're going to do tonight is, this webinar is about managing your career during the pandemic. And the point of this webinar is to show you, is to discuss with you what kinds of changes have happened from an employment standpoint and from the employer standpoint versus 12 months ago, and how you can position yourself for success in either finding a job in this market or switching careers, either way. So we'll cover that fairly wide variety of questions. We have several guests, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves in a moment. What we're going to do is everyone's on mute. So as you think about questions, put those questions in the chat. And what's going to happen is those questions will be moderated as we end. And we're going to try to allow as much time for your questions as possible. So again, put those in the chat as they come to mind. If they're general questions, that's fine. If they're directed toward a specific person, let us know. And we'll, like I said, we'll allow as much time as possible for you to ask questions. The other thing you need to know is in terms of who signed up tonight. Fairly wide variety of people, different, up to about 18 states, 6 different foreign cities: Halifax, Rome, Kitty, Moscow, Singapore, Toronto. In terms of breakdown, overall about 67% alumni, 33% of students. Good wide representation of graduate schools ranging from architecture and environment to engineering, law, medicine, music, public health, and SOM. So thank you all for joining this evening. I'm sure we'll have more joining as the evening progresses, but what I'd like to do now is to have our guest panelists introduce themselves, and we'll go in order of David, followed by Rachel, followed by Nancy.
Hi, everyone, and Michael, thank you for hosting us this evening. My name is David Halek, and I'm a Director of Employer Relations in Yale's Office of Career Strategy. I've been in this role since 2016, and I'd like to say that I've zigged and zagged my way through my career from higher education to private industry and back again to higher education. Prior to my current role, I was with Western Connecticut State University in institutional advancement, where I worked in corporate relations and development. And prior to that, I worked in the private sector with Prudential Financial, a boutique consulting firm called Peppers and Rogers Group, and other companies in strategic marketing and corporate relations roles. And earlier in my career, I was Associate Dean of Students at Gettysburg College. And I'm glad to be with you this evening.
Thank you. Rachel?
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here this evening. My name is Rachel Ferreira, and I am currently the Senior Program Associate over at CTNext, which is a quasi-state entity whose mission is really focused on helping to retain wonderful talent like everyone here in the state of Connecticut to really help build up Connecticut's economy and our ecosystem. I am a first-generation student myself and a first-generation American. And before this, I've worked in nonprofit and also the corporate sector. So I've done the trifecta of the government, nonprofit, and private industry. So I'm really excited to be here today and to hear from all of you.
Thank you, Rachel. Nancy?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nancy Gallegos, and I'm so excited to be here with you. Yeah, I'm a customer success manager at TextLine. TextLine is a software platform that allows businesses to text their customers. So think of restaurants, healthcare providers, home services, any kind of business that wants to text their customer. And I'm about 4 years into the startup tech world. I've been at TextLine for a little over 2 years, so I've jumped around a lot. I also am a first generation, actually high school grad and college grad. So that was a big thing for me. And right out of college, I moved to Japan and worked for a Japanese company in retail. And then I went into nonprofit world and worked with small businesses that employ youth. And then that's how I got my foot in the door to tech. So I'd love to answer any questions on how you jump around, how you get into the tech startup world, and anything else I can help with.
Thank you very much. And for those of you, just want to let you know that Angela Landano was expected to be here with us today, but she had a family urgent matter that she had to attend to, so she's not here this evening, but Nancy's here in her stead. So thank you again, Nancy. So with that, we'll begin the formal questions in terms of David. I'd start with you. From what you can see from the OCS standpoint, what types of jobs and skills are being sought now by organizations that come to the Office of Career Services compared to the time before the pandemic?
Sure, I'd be happy to take a stab at that. Just first, a few words about the overarching trends as they relate to the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic is being talked about in the business world as a great disruptor. I think a lot of business leaders seem to have that the consensus is that due to the pandemic, the future of work got here a lot sooner than was expected. And some of the major trends have been that automation continues at a rapid pace and accelerates. Remote work rose significantly and is probably here to stay. Human capital is increasingly important. New jobs are emerging and will continue to emerge, especially as the world undergoes a digital transformation. And finally, that the most in-demand skills are a mix of hard and soft skills. And I'll get to that a little bit in just a little bit. In terms of where the jobs are, I want to mention that a best source of this information is the Bureau of Labor Statistics for the US government. And they do a 10-year forecast on job and hiring trends, which they update annually. And so I look for some guidance to their reports where they talk about jobs on the horizon out to 24, 25. And those areas which they cite as growing faster than average. So I'm just going to highlight the ones that they mention as faster than average. Doesn't mean that others aren't experiencing growth, but these are the ones that are to be highlighted. In the area of business and management careers, advertising, marketing, public relations, and sales managers is a high growth area, as is computer systems analysts within business. In computer careers, it's probably no surprise that software developers, computer systems analysts, and information security analysts are hot jobs. In engineering and technology, by far the fastest growing area is biomedical engineering. In health and health technology, faster average growth in every area in this category, with the exception of pharmacists. Don't know what happens with pharmacists, but every other area, from physicians to occupational therapists to those radiologists who take our x-rays, the x-ray technicians, and those who read the x-rays, on a higher than average growth curve. In science and math careers, environmental engineers are flagged, as well as mathematicians and statisticians. In the social sciences, all stripes of counselors and therapists are indicated for high growth, anywhere from clinical to counseling psychologists, school psychologists, and social workers. And finally, in the area of visual arts and communications, producers and directors, as well as technical writers, are some of the areas that are growing very quickly, or expected to grow very quickly. As far as skills are concerned, the skills that are in high demand have been fairly consistent over the last 5 years. On top of the list are critical thinking and problem-solving skills as those that are in the highest demand. And those that seem to be among those, the newest emerging skills, have to do with the area of self-management including things like active learning, resilience, stress tolerance, and flexibility. And I'm sure that has a lot to do with the rapid pace of change that we're all experiencing and the need to upskill and reskill all the time. So there's a lot of emphasis in the eyes of business leaders that they're seeking people who actively participate in their own personal growth and their own skills development. According to the World Economic Forum, the top 10 most desired skills, and I'll go through these quickly, but try to encapsulate them. The top 10 are analytical thinking and innovation skills, active learning, which I just mentioned a moment ago, complex problem solving, critical thinking, creativity and innovation, leadership, social influence, technology use, technology design, resilience, as I mentioned, and reasoning and problem solving. The interesting thing is that 5 of these fall in the category of problem solving. So as much as technology is growing, we still need these soft or human skills are the ones that are in the most demand because they require you to think about how you can apply the technical skills that you're learning. Another source that I'd like to mention, and I'd like to also share it later in the chat, is a very interesting article that talks about, again, the same top 10 skills, but an organization called American Succeeds, which is a nonprofit, as well as EMSI Burning Glass, which is a labor force statistician. They analyzed tens of millions of jobs over the last 10 years and identified the 100 most in-demand skills. And they call them durable skills, which I like much more that term than soft skills. Soft skills makes it sound like they're not as important, but they refer to them as durable skills. And they group them into 10 major competencies. I won't take the time to go through them right now, but they're very similar to the major categories I mentioned a moment ago. What I like about the article that I'll share is they broke down the 10 major competencies to 100 skills. And I think this is a great tool to use as a reference when you're working on your resume, when you're updating your resume, or you're analyzing your own skills. Beyond just talking about the importance of communication skills, it breaks it down into a bunch of individual skills, from social media to personal influencing to presentation skills. And I think these will give you lots of prompts for when you reflect on your own skills and what you have in your tool bag to offer to employers, will prompt you for ways to further strengthen your resume.
David,
And that's my response to question number 1.
No, that's great. Thank you for the overview. I think it gives people a good, solid foundation. And with that, hello, Eric, and if anyone else wants to turn on their screen, feel free to do that as well. Rachel, I'd like to have a question to you regarding CTNext. The question is, does CTNext provide programs and services that help connect candidates to small businesses here in Connecticut?
Yeah, so that's a great question. CTNext in our role so CTNext has 2 prongs, right, of things that they work on. Half of our mission really encompasses helping the entrepreneur and the small business, which has been super critical during this last year because they've obviously in the pandemic had to pivot a lot. And the other part of our role is really working on the talent side of things, right? So making sure that there is talent to fill those roles and to help those entrepreneurs and small businesses succeed. So one of our programs that I'll mention that really focuses specifically on connecting students and recent grads to small businesses and for careers in them is our Governor's Innovation Fellowship, which was actually spearheaded by Governor Lamont a few years back. And what that does is it allows us as CTNext to kind of help small businesses who don't have human resources or HR centers to really be able to do some of that recruiting themselves, So we help them by sourcing the talent, right? And students can apply directly with us through a quick application that's actually linked in the chat for those who are interested. It probably takes less than 5 minutes. And then what that allows us to do is open it up to about 20 to 30 businesses, sometimes even more than that, who are looking actively to hire. And then students who are brought into that program have their choice of, they can apply to all the jobs, they can apply to one, they can apply to, as many as they want, but it covers all different types of majors, all different types of careers. It's not limited at all. So the companies are really diverse. And then what we offer to the students in that program is a $5,000 stipend to help take on some of those costs of being a recent grad, right? And having to relocate yourself or kind of do some of those things, and to help with that early career transition. And then we also invest in continued professional development with those students, right? So during the entire fellowship year, they're receiving continuous training and opportunities to interact with different CEOs, to learn how to manage their budget, personal finances, all of those kinds of things that are really important when you're first kind of getting your feet wet. But we also do offer things for those who maybe aren't a recent graduate, right? So we work with a lot of companies who are small businesses, medium-sized businesses, right? So when we're saying small businesses, it could be your average 5 to 10 person business, but it's also any business that has less than 500 employees, right? So it's a large range. And what we're able to do through our network is really people who are interested can come connect with us at CTNext, and we can be kind of your liaison, right? And connecting to businesses. If maybe you have been working in tech and now you're looking to change, and maybe you want to kind of go into software or development or something else, we keep a repertoire of resumes and interested people who are job seekers, and we can do some of that personal connecting with businesses who are looking to hire, which is a lot of them right now. A lot of our small businesses are in desperate need of talent, and especially talent that is looking to grow within their company, right? So one of the benefits of working at a smaller business is that many of our businesses offer equity, right? You come in and you can pave your own path. So they start out, you can start off in one section and kind of grow with the company as the company continues to grow. So that's a little bit about our programs, but we have a lot more. I'd encourage anyone to kind of visit our website or ask any questions. But yes, we definitely do have a lot of programs that support those job seekers and those who are maybe looking for a career change.
Rachel, thank you. And if you leave the program midstream because your company went public and you became a multimillionaire, we understand. Nancy, I have a question for you. Based on your background being in a startup, what skills are startups looking for?
Yeah, great question. It's a very broad question, but it's a good question. And broad because, there could be a startup in any type of industry or vertical, from health to finance to education to telecoms, which is what I'm in. So besides having a genuine interest in those industries, or maybe having some sort of context experience from previous work, a lot of the skills that they're looking for is what David mentioned. So I was like nodding at everything he was saying. It's like, because startups are literally from one day to the next, like gonna survive or die. It's like they're really looking for passionate people that have grit, that are flexible, that have the desire to learn and grow, because every day matters, especially at smaller startups as they're trying to compete in the market. People that are very data driven, data is just like a hot thing in startups, right? It just shows that, one, you care about measuring your performance and continuing to grow on it, and you understand how to measure data going on in the company that basically defines its success. And you can do that. That makes it easier for your managers and then for the CEO to be able to report to their investors that, the money that they're investing in this company is going to be worthwhile. So yeah, I would say all those things, being comfortable with ambiguity. I think some of the things that I also want to point out is just in reflecting on my work every day is just being confident in asking questions. So, things, just because someone gives you a vague answer or the company is like in a vague place, doesn't mean that you should just kind of move along with it. If like you want to know and need to know to do your work, it's more valuable that you ask and you raise the questions than not. And so not being afraid to have conversations even with the highest person in the company. So it takes a lot of time to build that muscle. I'll say myself experiencing that, but it definitely goes a long way once you get comfortable, and it contributes to the culture of the company. Big thing for especially successful startups, they'll talk about that it started with the culture that they have. And so that's why they're very selective in who they hire, like what type of passions do they have, what type of things do they do outside of work? Why do they want to make an impact in the health industry or in the finance industry? Because all of that kind of shapes like the energy in the office or now remotely through Zoom. So thinking about all those things, like what you can offer to the organization and what you hope to get out of it, kind of shape your story beyond the skills that you have, and whether they're transferable or direct. I hope that answers your question.
Well, thank you very much. And what we're going to do now, and for those of you who joined in, during the last few moments, what we're going to do is we're going to open the panel up to questions from the audience. And the way to ask questions is through the chat. So if you have a question of either an individual panelist or just a general question that can be asked by anyone, answered by anyone, please feel free to put that in the chat. And Lise Chapman is going to read those questions out. And I believe she has a few questions already in queue for the group.
Michael, thank you very much. Yes, we have several questions already submitted to us. Let me start with one. Most educators teach the way they learn themselves. COVID and technology changed radically the workforce landscape. Rather than training students for professions, how about focusing on transferable skills that prepare students for the jobs of tomorrow? What do you guys think of that? How do we go from an academic environment to a workplace environment?
Yeah, well, one thing I would say is that it's clear from the research and the industry speak that the expectation from the employer point of view is that the employees will educate themselves. And that's what I mentioned earlier, that one of the emerging trends is kind of like self-governance, taking care of your own professional development and your own learning new skills. They're looking for the next wave of employees who will identify their own skill gaps and take charge of filling those gaps. And a lot of that learning would take place on online platforms that have emerged. As one example, I believe it was Udemy, which is one of those online platforms, noted that in the last 4 months of the most recent 4 months of this year, the usage of their online training courses grew 4 times, and that's from individuals trying to grow their own skills. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that in addition to what you learn in the classroom, I think employers put a lot of value on people who have learned how to learn, how to teach themselves new skills using the myriad of tools that are out there, from online to workshops that employers may offer, and expect employees to take advantage of those.
Yeah, I was gonna add to like, if your employer doesn't already offer, at least at startups, employers, at least the good ones, they value when someone picks a program and says, can you pay for this program, or part of my bonus is going to be a stipend for this type of program because I want to become an engineer, or I want to move into product management, or in the role I currently am in, I would be able to do XYZ if I learn this. And that also kind of keeps your name in the company versus just going in and hiring someone else that has those skills. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just add in to kind of the point that everyone else was making, especially in the startup world, it's not about what you know, right? They're really hiring like your ability to learn, right? It's not necessarily about the skills, because as a startup, you have to kind of be a master of everything. You don't have the luxury of having a department for everything. So oftentimes employees are juggling, like, you didn't go to school for HR, but you're doing the HR now, right? Or you weren't the marketing person, you didn't go to school for marketing, but now you're venturing into marketing. So I think to Nancy's point, it's super important to advocate for the things that you want and to be a self-starter about growing those skills, right? And if you think, I don't know anything about this, but I want my organization support in it, to really advocate for yourself, especially in the startup world, because that's what they need, right? That's how you continue to get advancements, and it's how you continue to see success, by really advocating for what you need, and being hungry, right? And realizing that you're also going to fail a lot. Startups, you face like pivots every single day. You come in thinking you're doing one thing, and now you're doing something completely different. So kind of being flexible with that is really important.
Thank you all. Lise, the next question.
Sure. Next question. Does manufacturing figure at all in this opportunity? Many new technologies are transforming the manufacturing sector, which has been battered since the 1980s. I wonder where this sector is on the radar for growth.
I think from our side, so CTNext works really closely with both Connecticut Innovations, which is our parent company, which does most of the public venture capital for the state. But we also work really closely with DCD, which is the Department of Economic and Community Development. And the state right now is seeing a huge opportunity for investment in manufacturing and advanced manufacturing. As noted, technologies kind of shift things a lot, so making sure that manufacturing is going along with it. So you'll see that, at least from the business standpoint, the state has kind of gone along with that trend and understanding that manufacturing is going to be seeing a lot of that. So you have Industry 4.0 and a lot of those things that have opened up to be able to take businesses that work in manufacturing, make sure that they understand the technology and are able to adapt to it, but also to make sure that there are people who understand how to work that technology and can integrate it into it. So at a state level, we're seeing a lot more opportunities, and I believe Commissioner Lehman also just announced, I believe it's like $100 million worth of funding specifically for grants and things in the manufacturing sector to help make sure that advanced manufacturing is something that is a focus based on technology. I don't know if that answers the question exactly, but.
No, thank you. Please.
Okay, next question. We have many participants here tonight who are either Yale students or recent grads in the last, let's say, 3 or 4 years. And so they're looking at their first job, or maybe they're looking at their second job. What advice do you have for them of how to approach these new opportunities versus someone who's older or in transition? I really want to focus on maybe the Yale College senior or the most recent grad, 2019 and that rate, 21.
Well, my advice would be to, especially for first year students or undergraduates, you don't know what the jobs will even be by the time you graduate. They may be, not invented yet. So I think a great thing to do is to, within your industry of interest or industries of interest as you explore careers, to read literature from professional associations and other organizations that talk about job trends. If you have in mind some target employers, I would start looking at job postings, not because you're ready to apply for a job, but to look at the kinds of skills they're looking for in those jobs. And this is whether you're a current student or an alum who's maybe looking to change careers. Look at your aspirational jobs and then the requirements that employers are listing, and see if you have those skills, or if there are any skills gaps, figure out ways that you can acquire those skills on your own. And One of the resources I mentioned, that's a great one, and all Yale students have access to this, is LinkedIn Learning. There's a ton, there's probably thousands of courses in all sorts of different disciplines, and you can even pick out, you know, a pathway for yourself to develop skills in data science and analytics, if that's something that you haven't studied in your formal coursework, but you know it's going to be an element of pretty much any job that you want to pursue. You can gain those skills through platforms like LinkedIn Learning and Udemy that I mentioned earlier, and edX is another one. So try to monitor where the skills demand is going, and be ready for those, you know, by the time you're ready to make your next transition.
I have a few suggestions as well. Especially in the tech world, there's a lot of companies that have like entry-level programs, rotational programs. Yeah, and even in the retail space, that's how I got into the Japanese company. They had a graduate, like a recent grad program where you learn everything from the ground up of managing a company. And that really leveraged, I leveraged that experience for all of my other roles. So being open to just looking at different programs like that, even if you're not 100% sure that's what you want to do, but just being open to that opportunity and seeing what can come from it. Obviously, you know, maybe that you believe in the company or that you would seem to enjoy the work, but yeah, your first job is not going to be your last job. That's not the trend anymore. Most people are jumping around, and that's okay. But you just need to get that experience and put yourself out there and network a ton. Every job I've gotten from that first job to now has been from a reference or, you know, word of mouth. Like I haven't really applied cold, and I think that's what's helped me a lot. So, to make those big transitions. So, you know, before you even graduate, I remember a year before I graduated, I was attending career fairs just to talk to people, talking to recruiters, going to other schools, job fairs, doing whatever I could to meet with as many people. So I knew what was out there and I felt like I had options.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Lise, any other questions in the chat?
Yes. Okay. Sorry. I'm typing in Nancy's LinkedIn page. So go see Nancy and read all her outstanding opportunities that she's pursued, and you can begin at the beginning. And I love by the Japanese clothing company, Uniqlo, right?
Yes, Uniqlo.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so related to that question is we have many alumni on this in our talk tonight who are actually coming out of other professions. So I was wondering if you could address career transitions and how someone who's been in a job or two and they want to change industries. We have many lawyers on our call. We have many teachers. We have many people in public health, medicine. How, if they want to go into something that's completely different than what they're doing, or how do they find it? What do they do? How do they take those skills that they have and make them transferable into a new kind of company?
And that's for any of you. Go ahead.
I can share my experience. Besides just networking and also a little bit of advocating, looking at the job descriptions of companies or jobs that I wanted to work in and seeing how does it match with my experience? I'm the one that has to tell the story. I have to advocate for myself. So I have to tell that to the job recruiters. They're not going to put it together for me, right? So besides building that skill of advocating for yourself, sometimes it's also good to look out for help. There's a lot of career counselors out there or professional coaches. So I happen to also be networking and met a woman that does that. And she kind of helped me describe and tell that story. And I think that really helped because I was jumping from the nonprofit space into a startup that was doing cleaning services, the Uber for cleaning services. So it's like, how could I do that, right? And I was working with engineers. I'd never talked to engineers in my life. And so, but being able to kind of receive coaching and helping me build that story made me stand out in the interviews. And so I think besides doing some research on your own, don't be afraid to go look for help with professionals that know what's going on in the market and are experts at interviewing and such. They can help you.
Yeah.
And I would like to add, one of the things that our office prides itself on helping students with is to learn a set of skills that they can use time and again, not just for finding their first job, but for their second job and their next job and the one after that. And there are some, what we call pillars of job search, some just fundamentals that you do, whether it's your first job or your next job. And that is to look at your skills, your values, and your interests. And with the benefit of having been in the work force and now thinking about making a change, it's time to go back to those fundamentals and assess your skills, your values, and your interests, and maybe think about the ones that possibly are in conflict that make you want to change your job from what you're doing now, and find those companies, industries, or functional roles that would better align with your skills, values, and interests. And secondly, in terms of identifying, companies where to find that work, you can start narrowing down by functional area, by industry group, or by geography. Perhaps you want to work in the greater Boston area. Well, that's a starting point to narrow down and establish a target list of companies. Others may do it by functional area. Maybe you want to be a product manager, but you can be a product manager in lots of different companies and industries. So think about reflecting, first of all, on the skills that you have and that you've developed in your current role, in the current position that you've been in, and how those will translate to the opportunity that you seek. And the OCS website, by the way, has lots of resources along the lines of what was mentioned a minute ago by my fellow panelists about developing your career narrative. Be able to tell a story to a prospective employer about where you've been and why that positions you well to where you want to go, namely the position at their company, and how you'll be able to contribute value to that company based on your experience and the skills that you've developed along the way.
And then I'll just add in a really small point, but kind of like everyone else said, it's really about most of your skills are transferable, right? Because it's not always about the type of work you're doing, but what you've learned and being able to really be an advocate for yourself. I'd also say CTNext website, we have something that's called a resource wizard, where companies who register with CTNext, and we deal on average with 300 to 600 companies a year. So we deal with them at volume. They register on there for resources and things like that, and it gives you information on how to connect with those companies, right? So if you're looking to connect with founders, or maybe you're making a pivot, you were in tech and now you're maybe looking to be in something else, and software, something else, it allows you to filter, like Nancy said, out some of those things and see what kind of companies are out there, if anything sparks your interest. So I'd encourage you to do that. It's free to look at, and it allows you to have some common ground when you're looking to connect with some of those companies or those prospective options.
Thank you. Nancy, any comments on that question?
No, she said it perfectly.
Okay, next question from our audience. Abel, thank you. Are GPAs important in getting a job? And how are they used? How are the GPAs used these days in opening the door or going through getting an interview and landing the job?
Well, first of all, I will say, unfortunately, a lot of employers default to using GPA as a screening tool, which is a little short-sighted in my mind, and does not make for an even playing field as far as candidates are concerned. When we have conversations with employers, we encourage them to focus more on accomplishments, skill building, and potential than the GPA. And I would say, secondly, the further you are out into the workforce, the further you are from graduation from college, the less relevant your GPA or SAT scores are. Some employers request your GPA when you apply or expect to see it on your resume. But if it's not asked for, I would say, there's no reason to volunteer it.
Yeah. I had a very different experience, but it just depends on the industry that you're going into. For tech, I think at least startups, there's big tech companies that probably require, especially like biotech and stuff like that, that are very technical and specific. But for small startups, some people didn't even graduate from college. So I would just not provide that information if it's not asked for. I think in startups, what is better, or what you guys have an advantage of, is that you have Yale. It's a very well-known university. And so that is what is looked for. I think a lot of startups are starting to realize that they shouldn't just hire everyone from Harvard and Yale and all these prestigious schools, that they should look elsewhere as well. But it definitely helps that you have a big name on your resume and less of your GPA, in my experience.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I would say that it depends, right? Sometimes I would say that if your GPA is something that you're really proud of, it's always a nice added bonus, but it's not necessarily always the thing that'll kill you, right? Because maybe your GPA isn't as high, but you've done a lot of other incredible things. I think that startups especially are leaning towards the model of like looking at a candidate holistically, right? And not using, again, like I said, they don't usually have HR services or things like that. So they really are looking at your resume, right? And it allows you to be a little bit more personal. It's not like you're getting cut out through like the electronic system that's just scanning and looks at the GPA. So it allows you to differentiate yourself. So I'd agree with what the other panelists said. Sometimes it'll matter more than others, depending on your industry, but it's usually not something that will like stop you before you even get started.
And I would add one more thing to bring the point home, in that when we talked about the most in-demand skills for looking ahead to 2025, 7 of the 10 most in-demand skills are human skills, or the soft skills as they're referred to. And that is not reflective of your GPA, which would be more on the technical side, in my opinion. So the skills like, perseverance, innovation, the things that you can cite in terms of accomplishment statements from experiences you gained in school or in your early career, that you could cite where you've influenced people, where you've been a leader, where you've led a project. Those are things that employers are saying are much more important than anyone's GPA.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next question. I'm sorry, any other comments on that GPA? Let's just jump quickly related. Then I have another question about something, the psychological mindset you may need to be in looking for a job. But let me go back to, how about graduate school? Do you need a graduate degree to get the job you want?
I would say not always, right? It really depends. If it's something that's really specialized, right? Like if you're looking to be a lawyer or something like that, you're going to need that graduate degree. But depending on what you're going, if it's not something that is as specialized, not necessarily, right? So most of the startups that we work with, the roles that are super technical, right? Like if you're a biotech company and you're looking for a chemist, sometimes they will require that. But for some of those other roles, it's not necessarily something that's as important. And a lot of our startups are starting to see the value in adding on opportunities for like secondary education once you're in the company, right? So if you get to a point where now they do need you to have these additional skills, sometimes they can help pay for some of the costs. Sometimes there's different incentives like that where they'll kind of help guide you. So I would say not necessarily.
Yeah, I would just talk to your employer. In some cases, it might be not necessarily important to get a job, but to move up in a company. So like you said, Rachel said, they might pay for it for you to do part-time, or you can take a sabbatical and come back. For smaller companies, your experience, like running your own company or having very detailed, specialized experience in a startup where everyone else is technical and has none of that specialized experience, that context that you can provide is even more valuable to them than that master's degree. So I would just say, look at what you can bring to the table and think of it as like, you know, you yourself as the product that you can deliver to a company. Sorry, my dog is now wanting to play with me. And then whatever is missing, you can decide if it should be your master's or an online course. There's so many alternatives now that before jumping into a master's course that can be costly or time consuming, see what all options are out there and if you really need it, and how your employer can support you, or a new employer will, you know, how they will read that.
Yeah, and I would just echo what both Nancy and Rachel have said, is that unless it's a highly specialized career, I think a graduate degree isn't necessarily required. And I think that most employers put more value on experience, practical experience, whether you got that through an internship while you're in school or through a job earlier in your career. And, you know, I think some time in the workforce may help shape what direction you want to take in terms of pursuing a graduate degree after you have you know, put your toes in the water and test it out whether your initial job is the one on a path, it puts you on a pathway that you want to pursue, or perhaps you want to change directions. So I would keep that in mind as well.
Thank you. One thing I would like to add is that also volunteer service matters. And you may find while you're wherever you're working, if you're thinking about how do I make a change, or what do I want to do something different than I'm doing, look at volunteer work. You may find yourself actually picking up some skills and experience being a leader in a nonprofit or helping out in a nonprofit. In fact, two of our volunteers who helped us have now gotten full-time jobs in other positions where, you know, they're now running nonprofits. So we're really thrilled about that. But I'm thinking, wherever you live, wherever you work, look at the volunteer opportunities as well. And if you're interested in finance, maybe see if you can become a treasurer for a nonprofit or a local religious organization or something else that would give you the experience hands-on on top of your day job. It's hard to manage sometimes, but it may be worth it. And you may find that volunteer opportunity actually opens up into a full-time job as well. Let's turn to another question, which really is the mindset. One thing I want to highlight is the imposter syndrome, which many of us feel and go through, which is maybe it's not for me, I'm going to get found out, maybe I'm not qualified, I'm going to get fired, and all the negative noise that we all have had, or many of us have had. How do we get that negative noise out of our head after we've been rejected 3 or 4 times? How do we keep going? How do we know we can do it? How do we know never to give up?
Well, I think one is having a good support system, and you know, interacting with and surrounding yourself with your peers, friends, family, professors who know you well and who know that who recognize your potential and can, you know, help validate the fact that you do have the potential, you do have the skill, and you have plenty of things to demonstrate that you have done that in the past. I would also, in terms of when you're creating your resume or updating your resume, part of the exercise is coming up with a bunch of accomplishment statements so you can demonstrate to a prospective employer specifically what you've accomplished or what challenges or hurdles you've overcome. And I think reflecting on those things are a good boost to your self-confidence that yes, you can do it. You may be thrown into a situation you haven't experienced before, but it's probably not the first time that you've had to do that. And you've succeeded in the past, and you do have the foundational skills and ability to navigate those uncharted waters in the future.
Yeah. Also, loved everything that David said, but also knowing that you're not alone. I think sometimes just reminding yourself that everyone hates job hunting and everyone struggles with it at some point in their life. I mean, if you even just you look at number of applicants applying for jobs, that would just tell you that, you're not alone. And I think one thing that might help if you aren't already doing is asking for feedback. I'm not a recruiter, but the little times I've interviewed people and stuff like that, they haven't always asked for feedback. And that information could be really helpful. One, it could boost your confidence in saying that it had nothing to do with you. And it was like, these other people were further down the line, or they had a very specific experience that you didn't have, or, it just came down to maybe you were overqualified. There's so many reasons that could be it. And so sometimes knowing that answer could also help you. And then if it really is something that you need to work on, like certain skills that you're missing, you have that information and now you can do something about it. But if you kind of don't try to seek that information from the HR recruiters or your friends reviewing your profiles and stuff like that, or other people in the company that might be willing to give you feedback, then there might be a reason why you're feeling stuck, because you don't have something to work with. But so try to find some things to work with so that you can continue moving forward.
Yeah, and I would echo, I love what Nancy said. Our Connecticut Innovation CEO, Matt McCooey, oftentimes says to companies, right, when we're applying with small businesses, they're always looking for investors. So you hear no a lot more than you hear yes. So sometimes it's helpful to remember that on the other side, right, they're also experiencing a lot of rejection. It's not one way. So they can, asking for that feedback is really important, because it's not always a no, it's a not now. So having that feedback opens up the door of communication, adds someone to your network, right, where you're getting something out of it. And you want to make sure that you're always taking the opportunity to get something, because it's oftentimes not you, right? It could be someone with more experience, or maybe it was the way you delivered something. But if you're doing something that's maybe not coming off as well as you want it to, you want to know. So definitely always ask for that feedback, and lean on your support system, because it's rough out there, and you're not alone.
Thank you. And I know we just have a few minutes before 8 o'clock, and I believe Rachel has an engagement at 8 o'clock. So for each of the panelists tonight, any closing remarks for the students before we let them go to the rest of their evening?
Sure. I would like to just throw out there that no matter what stage of career planning or exploration you're in, whether you're headed for your first destination or your next destination, put yourself in the driver's seat of your own career destination. Take an active role and take charge of that. And by that I mean, don't wait for the right job to come along or rely on a job board to suddenly surface the ideal job that you're looking for. There are so many options out there to be a passive job seeker, but they won't give you the highest and best result. And as I think Nancy said before, based on her experience and based on most people who are successful in getting the job they want or the second job that they want, networking and using your contacts within industry, within your current company, tapping into the Yale alumni network, those will surface the jobs that may have not or may never be advertised, that may be the ones that you're seeking the most. And I would say also, as you think about your first job or your next job, come up with a list of target companies and focus your work on learning as much as you can about those companies, what kind of issues they're facing. Do you know anybody who can introduce you to someone inside the company and who can help you get a leg up for getting the inside scoop about how you can be successful getting a job? And finally, for the undergraduates, get to know your professors throughout your college career. So when it comes time to ask for a recommendation, it's not the first time you're speaking to them. And that's it.
Yeah, I'll jump along with what David was saying. I would say be bold, right? And try not to be scared. It can be, an overwhelming experience, but there's always something to be learned. And it's something that don't count yourself out before you've even given yourself a chance. There's so many times where people won't apply for the job because they're already thinking like, I'm not going to be able to get it. I don't have the skills. I don't have this. Try anyway, and always network, because it's oftentimes the warm connections that'll get you there. So ask the question. Don't be scared to make the introduction, to go to the networking event. Sometimes those things can be, it's a learned skill, right? Networking, but the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. So be brave. It's never too late also to change careers, try something new, and always keep learning, right? Always get that feedback, network as much as you can, and take every opportunity to figure out what you really want to do, right? Sometimes it's going to be multiple transitions. It's okay. It's okay to jump around more than once, more than twice, until you find the things that are on your have to have list and things that are, maybe not for me. But as you continue having those opportunities and having those experiences, you'll keep refining that list until you find something that's right for you.
Thank you. Lise, did you have a question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just going to follow up, because what I was going to say, 1stGenYale and all the alumni at Yale are here to help current students. So use us. I mean, we network, we mentor, we tell our stories, we hear your stories, we exchange ideas. So come use us, and you can find us through Cross Campus, 1stGenYale across campus, for any alum and any Yale student, any Yale alum. Also 1stGenYale through social media, through our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram accounts. We also have partnerships with other Facebook groups. One is called Why Jobs. It's for Yale Students for Jobs Board by alumni. So alumni post jobs for students there as well. It's called Why Jobs. And the other is the Yale Alumni Marketplace, which is for alumni to post jobs or opportunities for fellow alumni looking for jobs, articles. They're both of them have about 3,000 participants in them, so they're very actively used. Go check those out. And really, we're just here to help you. But first of all, I want to thank everybody who's been here. I want to thank Michael Watson for setting up this incredible panel with Rachel Ferreira, Nancy Gallegos, and David Halek. You guys were wonderful, sharing your stories and what people need to know. But I think the greatest message is networking. Networking is a little bumpy, as Rachel said, but you keep doing it. What we like to say, build your own board of directors. As you go through various experiences, remember people, write down their phone numbers, their emails. You're going to contact them in the future, and they're as advisors, as mentors, as what do you think I should do next? Or what do you think I should do here? And people are very receptive. People really want to help and help you succeed. So 1stGenYale and alumni at Yale, we're here for you guys. So be in touch, and we'll be glad to do whatever we can do. So Michael, thanks again. So I'm going to turn it over to you to your concluding remarks. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight. If you have ideas for future career-related programs, feel free to put those in the chat. We may be able to follow up with a survey in the next week or so, so please respond. But thank you, and have a great evening.